morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Assalamu alaikum, brother. Sadiq, how are you?
Alhamdulillah, how are you today?
Very good. Morning, Amit, Sean.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Right, nice. We're gonna start in 2 minutes. If you have the UFT, please open UFT and you had a chance to download the file. Yesterday we did the script. Download that too, so you can actually start from where we left off. But we will be covering a lot of new stuff today as well as we go. Basically, there are some repeated stuff we'll also cover from the items that we actually listed before. Many of the items will be repeated, and and at that moment, yeah, let me know if I'm going a little faster or something that's not clear. Especially, I would like to go over. I'm going to introduce the synchronization. Explain it a little how it works. We actually used it, but we didn't know where we actually used it. I'm going to show you where and how to actually change the synchronization point and etc. Then we will also go over more in details with object repository, because this is one of the core subject that we need to get a clear understanding, all of us actually, because when we interact with the web page and the UFT, every object that's collected by UFT inside the object repository, we want to understand how actually object is getting identified and how the smart identification is being used for some objects and what is ordinal identifier. And we also will go with all the objects that are available in the object repository, how they actually represent for each object, and we'll go in details as well. So let's get the test started, and we're gonna save this. Yesterday we did the mortgage calculator data-driven test with a bunch of new data, and we actually were able to capture some test data from the web page, and then we compared it, and we stored some results based on our comparison. So you all should have this test in your folder. If you expand it, we actually everything on the shared object repository. And we haven't done anything in the function library. We just utilize the same function. So let's save this file as today's date, so we can actually, whatever change made for the day, it will be on that particular date, so we can follow what's been done. Okay, I'm saving that test under today's date, and I also changed the name of the action, mortgage calculator data driven. DD stands for data driven. Basically, we are running with a different set of data. That's why it's called data driven. We haven't gone to framework, but eventually this will take us to the framework, and we'll explain that when it comes to that point. So the synchronization point, what is it? So The synchronization point, whenever you actually, if you open your object repository and expand it, if you click on any object, it has some property has default synchronization, or whenever you add it, it gives a synchronization point. So for example, if I just type here browser, let's give me mortgage calculator, and there's something called sync. This is what actually we meant by synchronization. Sync is mean waits for the browser to complete the connect navigation. So it's basically default wait to for the web page. I mean, for any page to load. So whenever you want to open a page, you can put that command that say sync. It should start at the beginning of the line, or wherever you want to let the application to become available before it actually starts inputting data inside it. So if we say page, now we're gonna go to the page and dot sync, same thing. So it allows the user to wait for the page to be fully loaded, and you can change that value in the default. So I'm going to show you where you actually do that in a moment. I'm just going to run this and see if we can actually launch the web page. So my web page is open. I'm just going to stop it because I just wanted to open and navigate to the mortgage calculator. Let's create a new action just to give. We're not going to use anything here at this moment. We'll come back to this later on. So we're just going to create another action. Click on action, say MC_2. I'm just going to say MC and mortgage calculator 2 and create a new test. And what I'll do, I'm going to introduce a couple of things here. Synchronization and the how you actually use it. So if I just want to record something, let's say I'm just going to record. Okay. Remember, we actually did something called checkpoints. If you have your recording part, there are a bunch of other stuff, and by default, it records the normal recording. We know that. So if you select on the one of these magnifier, it has some stuff. Those called the checkpoints. Its checkpoints are like a validating text or any content in the web page. Most widely used is the standard checkpoints or text checkpoints and so on. We're just going to use the first one. And if I click on the mortgage calculator, it actually gives me the page, browser, and web element and mortgage calculator. If I click OK, you see something on the, so these are the, when you add checkpoints, so it gives me the name, it's saying mortgage calculator. I can rename that to mortgage calculator checkpoint 1, right? Checkpoint 1, let's say. And it has some properties. It's giving me HTML tag and inner tag. HTML tag has a value H2 and inner tag has a value mortgage calculator. This mortgage calculator is basically this name here on the web page. And you can actually add, change, do the parameterization. So we can actually either say, okay, we want to select the second one, right? if we want to use it as a constant or either leave it as it is, or we can also parameterize to the data table by like, if you select it, it will automatically create a data table, mortgage underscore calculator underscore inner text, and it's going to reside in our global sheet, right? And this is the point I'm more interested, like, see that checkpoints timeout right here? By default, it's showing 0. This is what the synchronization points is referring to. So right now it's saying 0. I can increase that. Let's say if I want to increase 20 seconds, right? It will wait until 20 seconds. If this page doesn't load, it's going to sync until the 20 seconds is there. 25 seconds. If 25 seconds passes and this text is still not showing in the page, is going to fail. So basically, it's another way of thinking of wait statement. You know how we use the wait, or provide if else statement saying wait until maximum of 60 seconds. This is the similar concept that's used for. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah,
Is it smaller?
Yeah, it's not clear, and the letters are writing very small.
It's very small.
Yes, and also it's not clear. The worst thing is not clear.
Increase the font size, brother Shamsuddin.
Okay, all right, I will do that. So I'm just going to click OK and stop it. I think I did yesterday. Let me look at it one more time. So options, text editor. Yeah, it is there. 14. You want me to make it a little bigger, more?
I think because you put two windows in one screen, that's why it's look like smaller. You can just navigate between the screen when you want to show something new. Have one.
Okay, got it.
This might help.
But I'm showing only one screen. If I make it this way, does it looks better?
I believe this is better. And then when you can navigate between the two screens.
All right, let's do something else. Maybe the text. Maybe if we make it bold, or then it will make clear. Right. So remember we did the changing the text, the string. We can change to like a little darker color. So as I was explaining, we this is our checkpoints, right? It's actually recorded as a checkpoints. So if we had to go back to our, I'm just putting a comment, the checkpoints. If we were to go back to our mortgage calculator 2 and C2, and it's recorded in the local object repository, right? And you see the checkpoints and output properties. Basically, when I recorded, it recorded the checkpoints under the checkpoints and output objects. And once you click on that, it basically brings everything that we actually, while we were recording, we saw it. It brought it here. And this is where we can change the time. So we set it as 10 seconds, whatever number we want to put as a checkpoint timeout, which is a synchronization points. And we can increase that, decrease that based on our needs. But usually, when you run a test, you want to check in different way before the page loaded. So let's say if I want to run it and I put a breakpoint, right? And I'm sorry, not this one. I'm just going to open the browser again. So check the synchronization point is the like wait statement. It's just basically it refers to individual objects instead of telling the entire line to wait. So this might be it's 100%. So that's good. And back to my other line, right mouse click. So if when I click on run, it actually runs the test, and then whatever the action is on the under the test, it will run everything. So if you want to just run this specific, lines, you just right mouse click, and you say right from step or debug from step. If you do the debug from step, it will stop every line. So it's basically creating a breakpoint automatically, even though it's not going to highlight it. So let's click the debug from step and click on it. See, it's when you click on debug from step, it actually pause on the line number first, the line you actually started, and then you can step into. So I can step into and then it click. So now, remember we created a checkpoint. So you want to validate the text here, this text, right? We want to make sure this text is present in the web page. So we did put a checkpoint, and we also provided a sync of 25 seconds to wait before it actually come in, right? So if let's say just to make an error here, let's say I'm in like Google page right now, you will see it's going to wait, exactly 25 seconds, and then it's going to go to the next step, and that particular step will fail. So if I run it now, it's saying running, right? See that on the lower, if you look at my cursor right here, it's still running. So after 25 seconds, it's just gonna, throw an error saying, I can't find that mortgage calculator. It obvious it's not gonna find because we went to the Google page. So the mortgage calculator text is not there. So the error is showing they cannot identify the object mortgage calculator of web class web element. So web element class, whatever the property we provided, it is not showing. And it also tells us verify that the object properties matches an object currently displayed in your application. So looking at the second line, does it tell, is it displaying in my application? No, right? And it also tells which line it failed, line number 4. And it also gives us some other tips to actually see if we can actually reproduce that error again. If the objects in your application have changed, the run maintenance mode can help you identify and update your steps and other objects on your repository. So we will stop it here, and stop. So if we go back to, let's say, we're just gonna run it again and see if it actually helps us pass the test. Okay, so if I go back to mortgage calculator, as soon as I get in there, now if I run it, it's just gonna, as soon as it find it, which is gonna happen first second, and then it will go to the next one. See, so the standard checkpoint passed, and it also tells me the inner text was calculator, and it found that that text, and the test passed. So this is how you do the checkpoints and enable the synchronization point based on, if your website is kind of slow, or sometimes it takes sometimes to load, and which happens in any application. And that's why it's useful to use the sync point. But you know, but it is also good practice to use if also statement, because you don't want to hard code the number just to wait. It will delay your entire test for each one. Then if you want, if you have like hundreds of steps you want to perform, and each of them you provide 25 seconds, it will given wait until that particular content is displaying on the page. So that's the idea of the synchronization point. Did anyone understand that piece? If not, please let me know. I can go over again a different example.
So pretty much what you're saying, if we wanted to synchronize it and the time that we can manually put in, or we can use the with statement to do that when we're recording. Is that correct?
No, I'm talking about the synchronization point. Synchronization point
Yeah.
is basically, yeah, I mean, you can actually provide that number where it will time out at that number you provide here at the checkpoint timeout.
Okay, when you're recording, correct?
Yeah, when you're recording, even after you record it, you can change that anytime
Change
you want.
it.
Let's say
Okay.
you know that sometimes when the page loaded, this text may take sometimes to appear on the web page. So you want to put some maximum number here. Let's say you want to put 1 minute. It's going to wait maximum of. It's the same logic as the if else statement we created. Like if the web page exists, then go to the next step. And we provided some after the if statement. We provided some value in there, which is the wait number. If we go back to our this action, remember we put 60 seconds. It's basically the similar concept, right? A similar way of doing. But those only applies for the browser page and the checkpoints.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. The next thing I want to go again on the object repository, because this is something actually I think some people are not clear. And inside object repository, we have a lot of other content in there to understand. So we know if we open the object repository, let's go back to our shared object repository. This is our shared object repository, right? And so if we make it a little bigger and expand it, we know we have a page object, and page object has a name. We gave a name. These are a logical name. You can change it, and it's a browser class, and then it has some properties you can use. And the properties started with here it's saying ordinal identifier. Remember I said I mentioned one with the ordinal identifier. What it is? It is basically the it's telling that okay, the ordinal identifier, it has a type and the value. Type is the creation time and the value is 0. So if I click on that, it will bring up another ordinal identifier pop up, and it also gives me like bunch of other options like location. I can choose by location. This is not a good practice to use the location because X, Y coordinate may change at runtime. The good thing is to use the index or the creation time. So in our case, if the creation time is value is 0, that means it's only looking for the first web page. I mean, first tab or first one it opens. But let's say I have another tab. My creation time would be 2, not 1, because it's going to ignore the first one and it's going to go to the second one. And that would change to, 1, sorry. So it's actually reading as the index number. So we know the index is start from 0. 0 is basically the first one, and the 1 is the second one. So if I were to do something on my second tab, let's say some application actually works. As soon as you click on it, it opens another tab, and you have to basically work on both tabs. At that moment, you just increase it to 1, and it will recognize, okay, I'm only looking at the second browser on the web page. Same thing goes for the page. So if you click on the page icon here, mortgage calculator, and it also tells on the left side, it's saying, okay, this is only like a page, and the other one on the left right here is saying like a browser icon. It's like you're browsing something here, right? So these are the icons. Once you get familiar with these icons, it will be much easier. So browser, page, and in the page we have name, mortgage calculator is the same, and it's a class of page class, right? And in here, I don't have anything here, right? I only have a smart identification is true, and everything else none or nothing actually telling. So in the object smart identification, there are properties that actually help us to identify, okay, I'm only working on mortgage calculator page. And if I say, okay, I'm not going to use the object smart identification, all I have to do make it false. So it's not going to deal with anything. It's not going to even look at the smart identification. I'm going to come back to the smart identification in a moment, but let's do the just change the ordinal identifier. I'm just looking at the first browser and the first page. So I'm just going to say, okay, here I don't have option to create add the creation time. So I will select index, and index leave it as a 0. So basically what I'm saying, okay, is the first page of that, because when you are, it's like a tree. When you are inside a browser, you are already inside that browser, which is the mortgage calculator name, right? And then once you get there, everything is going to happen is inside that particular browser, which is the page is uh, the mortgage calculator page name, and we said, okay, it's just the first one by default. For the browser and page, we are only using this because that you don't need anything else, because you don't have too many browsers, too many pages. Only thing we have is the the objects inside that page, which are calculators, the web element, which is total payment, start date, down payment, and so on. All these are the objects inside that particular page, and each of them has their own identification to know who are they and how they actually get identified. So if I were to change like something, let's say let's say home value, right? So home value, let me see if I can make it a little bigger. Maybe it doesn't do it here. I don't know why. It should change the font as well. Okay, so the home value, I have some property name. So you know the object property, it has a logical name. It's saying home value. We can change that and however we want, and it's a class of web number. And then it has test object details. Remember, I said it's when you try to identify an object, it has some properties and it has some value. Similarly, we explained that if you want to distinguish between a car A and car B, let's say you have a Toyota and you have a Nissan. Both car has Nissan and Toyota. It's already telling us, okay, these are two different cars, so we know which are. But what if you have two Nissan, both are same look, same color, everything is same. How do we actually know which one is, how do they actually differ from each other? The way we know is we know that the car has a VIN number, right? Vehicle identification number, and that is unique. So by that number, we know this is car Nissan A and car Nissan V. Same thing goes for the class number, and it has some type and name, which is home value. So the home value itself is telling us here, okay, this is a unique piece of information, home value. Because if we look at the other one, like let's say interest rate, it also gives us the name interest rate right here. And if we want to look at the loan amount, it also tells like something with the principal. We can always change this value by providing a regular expression concept. Basically, what we did something is if you right mouse click on that corner, let me close that again. If you right click on that icon right here on the left right side, and it opens up another repository parameter, and you can actually use the data table to parameterize, or you can just provide constant. But in this case, we know that principal is the keyword here. It distinguishes between the one on the interest rate or home value or home insurance. So we can just take that. Just let's say we're just gonna say dot star anything before and put a first parenthesis. I'm just gonna paste principal here. The spelling has to be correct. The whatever text you are taking, it has to be the same spelling as it's showing on the as it actually captured at a record time when you add it into the object repository. And then you can close the bracket and then you say, okay, dot star. Basically what it does, it ignoring anything. It's a wild card concept in other programming languages. But in VB, the UFT, it's a regular expression, as you can see it right here, right? You can use that to just only look for that text to identify that particular object's loan amount, right? Or alternatively, you can do, let's say I'm just going to cancel, I'm not going to do anything. Let's go back again. If you just say, okay, apply regular expression, click on that, it's going to give you another option. Do you want to add a backslash before each special character in order to treat it literally, right? If you click yes, it treats those brackets as a special character and provided a backslash before that. So when you provide any backslash before a special character, it ignores that as a text or any character. It's just gonna ignore that. That's one way of doing it. But for you, like interview question, it would be asked if you are going for a UFT interview automation, they might ask you, how do you actually identify an object from a web page if it's like a dynamic, it changes every time? Is there a way you can identify? You can say, okay, I can use the regular expression, which it actually does. There are a bunch of regular expression I can use. If you click on here, it has other web regular expression. I will give you example of each of them in the share drive, because if I go through all this, it's going to take all day. So I will provide a documentation, you can look at it. But the most used and the interviewer would like to know is the one tells, like, if I want to ignore a special character, how do I do that? I can use the backslash to ignore those, or if I just know, the best useful one is the wildcard. That is the most widely used, and that's why we are showing it here. All you have to do dot star, which is a wildcard, and parenthesis, and then just put the name that is unique to that object. So principal is the unique name. So you can just provide bracket and then dot star again. And when you use the dot star, you have to check this regular expression. And when it comes this pop up, you don't want to use backslash because you already gave the dot star in there. So there is no need to provide that backslash because we removed the other brackets, right? So you just click on no and click OK, right? As soon as you click on OK, it generates like a star something on there. It tells that, okay, we use the regular expression in there. And if I want to save it and highlight it from the application, it's going to still highlight it by just the name principal. But always good practice to use other properties, because HTML tag, it actually tells like hierarchy of, okay, this is the tag of that web number object. It has a tag name input. So it filtered down, okay, we are going to look for only any web number on the page. We are interested to look only those who has a input. So we are actually filtering down our property level. And then we also said, okay, we're just gonna look for the type which has the value number. So we are filtering more, and then we actually give another property name, which is principal, and that also tells uniquely, okay, this is principal, and we know in the web page there is no other principal on the web page. The only way you can tell by using get yourself used to it object spy, and every time you do, just spy on it and click on those, and you see that it's basically the same thing as showing in the object repository, and it gave a name like a param PMI, and when you add it, you can change that name. But if you scroll it down, it has a tag is input. So this one also will has a input, and it has HTML ID. You can use HTML ID PMI, or you can use name. See, the name and HTML ID has the PMI in there. So if I were to do the regular expression for the name, I'm just going to take the PMI, or I can use just the HTML ID, which has a name, and use it. So let's go back to our object repository, right, and change the PMI, so it will make a little more sense. And our PMI has a name, and if we just remove that, let's say I'm just going to take that out, name, I can click on add description. Just click on that plus sign over there on the right side, and it opens up the object to add. So it gives me like Y, expat, bunch of other properties, visible, value, title. Some of them doesn't have anything. So if they don't have anything, you don't use those, because those are useless. Because if it's not there, I mean, there is no point of using those. And as you scroll it down, it has more properties. So here you see the HTML ID. You can just click on that and click OK. It will add it to it. So you can change as you need, and then we're just gonna save that and see if it highlights in the application. See, it highlights by that, because the PMI is the name that is unique for this object, and it also has the smart identification. So let's say I'm just gonna remove that PMI. I'm just gonna remove that type number, and I will just say false to this and say I have only input. How do I know? Do you think it's going to identify the object is showing on the web page, which is the PMI? Will it highlight if I say just click on highlight? It does, right? So let's save it and then try it, because we didn't save it. Still do it, right? Why? Any idea? Anyone? The HTML tag property is currently listed in assistive properties. Okay, so it is listed in the assistive properties. That's why it's not giving me. So I have to either remove it from there. See, on the assistive property, it has HTML tag. That's why it's not letting me. So in our case, to going back, why it's still highlighting it? It highlighting because there is no, we deleted all the property for mandatories, but still there is something actually helping us to identify, which is assistive property and has HTML ID. And HTML ID value was PMI. So it uniquely knows, so okay, PMI is the one that I'm looking for. So that's why it got highlighted. And you can add and modify more assistive property if you need to. It's like a helper, like, helping to, if any of these fail to identify, it looks for assistive properties to help to identify. That's the basic idea. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And then there is something called smart identification enable. Remember, we were talking about, I said I'm going to go back to the smart identification. This is where you actually do the smart identification. And smart identification has some properties. So if you go to configure, we don't change it until we are familiar with all this. As you practice this and try to do many times, you will get to it. But most of the time you will be handling, if you are working with this tool, let's say you get a job 2 months later, but you know the basic already, mandatory property, you know how to identify an object. Then at some point you will find this at work and kind of figure out how to do this. But you need to have the concept clear. You need to know what is smart identification. So smart identification is basically, if the mandatory property and the assistive property failed to identify the object, then it looks for the smart identification. It's basically the more properties in there. If the smart mandatory is smart identification is checked box here. If it's not checked box, it's not going to do it. And also, if you go back to your object repository, it has to be as a true. So smart identification, whenever it's true, then only it looks for the smart identification. Make sense? If you make it false, let's say, let's go back to our the web. So environment, we are working on web application, and we selected the web number, and let's say we're just going to remove that, right? We say uncheck that smart the HTML tag and click OK. And we only have the mandatory property is the HTML tag, name, and type. And our smart identification, we have it enabled. If we disable it, it's not going to record anything for that. So leave it as it is. We will change it in the object repository. So going back to my object repository and expand all this. So I record that line right previously, PMI. I'm just going to enable it and bring it here. So I have it as a false and highlighted, still does it. Why? There could be a number. These are troubleshooting you will be doing at work if you are working on that. If I go back to my tools again, I'm just going to go back and forth on this because this is something you need to understand. And I'm going to spend as much time as needed to make it clear. So web number, we only have this, and we have this smart identification is true. Since we recorded earlier, before we actually change this, so we need to record it again and show it again, do it again in order to make it not identified by the smart identification, right? So let's, I'm just gonna delete that line. I mean, basically PMI, and I will save it and add that PMI again.
Okay. I got a quick question. So what's our purpose for it not recognized by the smart identification? Like yeah.
So the reason why I'm showing, if you might encounter something it's not identifying. So I'm just trying to explain like what could be the reason it is not identifying and what would be your plan or implementation to make it identify. So basically, if anytime you encounter any issue, these are the troubleshoot you will be doing, looking at the object identification and smart identification to see if it's actually identifying or not.
So my target over here is to make it true, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I'm just changing it, and now I had the smart identification as checked, so that's why it's showing enabled. And the mandatory, these are my mandatory properties. Again, remember we saw these are my mandatory properties. Type, name tag, and I think we removed the HTML tag from the assistive property. So any of these is failed to identify this property, it's gonna look for the assistive property. If nothing is there, then it's gonna look for the smart identification to like filter it. It's gonna do it automatically for you. So let's try to change this. We know it's gonna identify anyway because the smart identification is true here, right? And it identifies, right? So if I make it false and save it, still do it, right? So let's move all this. Oh, first of all, save it. Still do it, right? So let's go back to our smart identifier in the tools, object identification, web, and then go back to web number. Okay, web number is right here. Do we have anything here? Do we have anything here? No. Anything index? None. Smart identification, make it unchecked and save it. Let's go close it and open the object repository once again. Okay, so now as we recorded that we have it false. Let's try it again. Still recognizing. Save. Add it again. Still adding those features, and these are the only one, the mandatory properties. Basically, I added as a mandatory property. That's why. And the smart identification, see, it's false because I checked that off. And I'm gonna remove that and save it. Click on save. Still it. I think I had to. This change, whenever you make this kind of change in the object repository, you have to restart the UFT to make those changes because it's residing in the local memory. That's why it keep on identifying. So the reason why I showed this, because I want you to understand is you might encounter this type of issue, kind of saying, okay, why I'm not getting identifying this object, or why it's identifying something else. Let's say I'm clicking on this PMI, and tomorrow it's gonna highlight it in somewhere else, but you want to make sure it is highlighting in the right place. So you want to make sure that whatever property you're using for the web number, it's it's actually looking at the mandatory property. So let's remove like all the tag and name and type, right? Just we're gonna use something called HTML ID. Okay, HTML ID, and click OK. And I uncheck that. Click on OK, and go back to our object repository. And I'm gonna delete that object and add it again. And PMI. So do you see the difference? The HTML ID is PMI because I only wanted to record this one. It's gonna still recognize it by this. So let's say I change to PMI2 and save it. The selected object cannot be found in the application because the PMI was the unique piece of info. That the PMI value for the HTML ID it's not there because it doesn't know what is PMI2. It only knows only PMI. That's why it's not recognizing. For this type of issue, you can use apply the regular expression, like just say this way you can do it. Just dot star after that. You don't need the parentheses. If you just say okay dot star, it means anything after PMI is gonna ignore. It's gonna say okay, I'm not looking at anything after PMI. That's why dot star the regular expression, and then you have to check that too, and click OK and save it and highlight it. It does exist. Any question?
Yeah, question. So when you went to the object identification from tools, and then you clicked on web number, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you click on web number, it's going to give you a list of all web numbers, just not for the PMI. If you were to select it, home value, interest rate, is going to give you for all the web numbers, right?
Yeah. So now I have look at this web number, and I changed my identification how the objects will be identified. So I only said I'm just going to use HTML ID as a mandatory property, and I remove my assistive property. I don't need any help to identify any of these objects. I just want to use the mandatory part, and I'm also not using the smart identification. So every time you record anything on the web number is gonna only record with the object HTML ID. So let's go back to the.
So no, that's what I'm asking. It's for
Yeah,
all the web numbers,
web,
right?
all
yeah,
the
all
web numbers. Yes,
got
that
it.
is yeah.
That's it. Okay.
And same thing goes for the others. Like if you go back
Yeah.
here, let's say I'm just gonna select, like let's say in the future I'm just gonna working with link. By default, mandatory is HTML tag and text is and text. These two properties is using, right? And if any of these property fails to identify, is gonna look for assistive property. Assistive property, the name of this. But you can just go in there, say, okay, I'm not gonna use this ABC name, but I'm more interested to
No, I get that.
use.
I get that part. I get that part.
Okay. All right. And also visible on whatever you can change it to, and it will do that thing. Also, you can add more items in there, configure the object identification, and that will help to identify an object. Does it clear to everyone else? Is it clear? I mean, makes sense? Because the reason why I'm explaining this,
Yes,
right
it
after
does.
this, okay, right after this, actually, we're not gonna, after like we're gonna take some break after 10-15 minutes later. After that, I'm gonna not using anything on the object repository. I will completely remove object repository. I'll code that, and I will explain you how you can actually avoid the entire object repository. Just code it by yourself. Basically, we'll come back to those object property again and again. That's the reason why I'm trying to make it clear to you, so you know this object repository is used. This is how it identified each object in the page, and let's so we know this is the object we are using, and it has some property coming from here, and it say, okay, I'm gonna use the to identify these objects. I use HTML. Oh, why it's not writing? HTML tag or anything that's on here I'm writing. It's not recognizing. So it's most likely it did not recognize anything from here coming as the mandatory property. If it fails by the mandatory property, so hard to write with the mouse. Okay, mandatory property. Then if none of those recognize it, so it failed to recognize mandatory, then it looks for the other property, which is my the assistive property, right? Which are the helpers, basically helping me to identify those And then if none of those happen, it fails. This one fails. This one fails to identify. Then we use something called a smart identification, right? And that's what actually helps us to identify. But we're not going to use anything here. We are interested to use the mandatory property only, because these are like the other helpers to identify. So, make sure you understand that piece of information for identifying the objects, object identification and web. And you can change for each of these. You can change it for the web table. I mean, if for any object you want to use, let's the web list or web file, or even for the web element. When you read the text, remember we recorded the text in the web page, said, okay, inner text is mortgage calculator. It actually recorded the HTML tag and the inner text because that was the mandatory property we used. And if none of this has, then it would look for the SST property, which I can add and modify whatever I have. But one thing you have to remember, whatever property you use for the mandatory, you cannot use the same property for assistive. Only once you can use it, either way, either for mandatory property or for the assistive property. And you can add and remove, as I said. And then smart identification. Smart identification is the third option you will be using to identify an object. And you can configure by going here. If you click on smart identification, inside the smart identification, it has some other filtering. The one is saying, okay, base filter property, and the other one is optional filter properties. Same concept. Basically, it's like it's same as the one is showing here, but it's like a more of like getting you to understand, identify this object. So basically you can add more here, more here. So you have to think like, okay, what can I do to make it identify? Think of a car, to compare it to cars, and think the object as the same way. So that way you will know, okay, I can, utilize this to make sure the object gets identified the property. And here you can, the base filter, you can actually do the same thing, add more properties in there if you need to. But most likely I recommend, leave it as a default, because these are the most commonly used, and that's how it's recognized. But if you want to completely, avoid smart identification, in my case, I don't use a smart identification because I think the mandatory property is good enough. If not, assistive property will help me. And I go, when I do the setup, I actually go back to my object identification here. If I am working on the web application, I just select each of them and uncheck those, smart identifier for each of these, basically. And
so just to clarify my, okay, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead. Yeah.
Just to clarify my understanding, you're giving this example just so that if we run into an issue where we cannot recognize it, or it shouldn't recognize it because there's an error, but it still passes, that's when we can use all these other options to recognize
Exactly,
it. Is that what it is? Why we're doing it?
Yeah.
So it's not like it's going to happen. Just in case we run into a problem, those are the options. That's good to know, so we can identify.
Yeah, that is absolutely correct. Yeah. Basically, you don't use this a lot, but if you are working on an application, those are like some applications built with some new technologies, like Angular application might give you some, sometimes makes people crazy, like not identifying. If you don't know how to identify an object, that's when people get confused. And I saw a lot of blogs on Google page, or even like website, like a lot of people encountering this kind of issue. Those are the people actually working, and they don't know how to identify. So other people actually putting comments, this is what you should do. So that's why, based on my understanding, my experience, I'm giving you this info. This is going to be helpful for when it comes to identifying an object. And most importantly, in the interview, there will be a question about this, maybe at least a couple of them, because this is the one that actually tells you how you identifying objects, because you're basically dealing with objects all the time, reading the data or writing into the web page or capturing the something from web page to your database or a spreadsheet. So these things is going to come over and over, and you will be dealing with this a lot if you are using the object repository. But it will make more sense when you go when we go to the descriptive programming. I don't know if you heard about the term descriptive programming. Basically, instead of using anything from the object repository or anything on this list or the shared object repository, we will write our own code and to make it identify. And that's also reason why I'm explaining, saying, okay, how does this object actually identify? If I were to click on a let's say web button, right? And if I know that web button, when I record it, name doesn't have any value, what can I do? Maybe let me spy it, see what value it actually comes. And as you go to your as you do the spy on the application, you will kind of know, okay, if I click on here, is it a link? Okay, this is a link. I'm looking for the web button. Something has a web button. So let's look at one of these. Let's say share this calculator. So that's a web button, right? And if you spy, basically everything you see, the smart identify, the object identification, it captures everything here. All the properties that either in the mandatory property, assistive property, or a smart identifier, they all gonna use these properties from here for this object, the web button, right? Name, AVX, Y, AC. You saw that name, right? It's basically the same. Last name, disable, name, and so on and so forth, and list goes on and on. You can, so whenever the developer coded, they actually, because they have so many buttons in the page or similar objects, so they want to provide as many properties as possible to make that piece of button or the text unique. Whenever user input something or user click on that, if you click on this calculate, it should do something. So these are the in the back end is happening. But for our testing, even automation, we are actually using whatever the property value developer use to code their application. They use these properties, so we are actually using this. And anytime if you see let's say you want to click on this link, view loan breakdown, and it never, you failed to do it. You tried all these things. You went to object spy, you tried to do object identification, and you went to identifier trying to see, okay, I use all these property different way, but it's still not working. Maybe the developer broke this code, or you can ask your developer, okay, can you put a HTML ID equals some unique value? You can request that. So that way you can just use HTML ID for this link and kind of get work to that link. So these are the things you might encounter in work environment, which we do all the time. We have to go to ask developer, make sure you add some unique value to identify. That's how you grow your communication. So I hope that actually helps a little bit. And let's take, if you don't have any other question about the smart identification, ordinal identification, or the any mandatory properties, assistive properties, and any of these it's not clear, please let me know. I can go over, because this is something you need for not only here when you go to Selenium, there will be something called page object. I mean, we call it object itself, but it's the same concept, and it will make more sense. We are using the same way, but it's different way of looking at it. But you will get that much easier way, understand that piece when you go there. But that's why I'm asking, make sure you understand this, so you can be, better at that moment. Let me know if it's not clear. Anyone? First name, is it clear to you? I saw you said that you're not seeing the page, the screen very clear.
Yeah, it's
Does
okay.
it
I
make sense to
can
you?
see. I'm just following along what you're doing.
Okay, yeah, if anything is confusing or anything not clear, please do let me know.
Okay, for sure.
Sure. Akhtar, Alamgir, or Sean, Shamam,
Yeah, it's
are
better.
you guys, okay, are you guys up to, I mean, you guys understand what the concept of the whole idea of is the object repository and smart identification, and these are the piece I'm actually explaining here.
Yes.
Okay. Let's take 10 minutes break and we'll come back to, because we will spend a lot of time on this, and we'll go over the text editor and different class of objects, and we'll try to make it clear, and then we'll jump into how we can actually completely avoid the object repository and make our own coding. And we'll come back in like 10, 11, 25, 26, okay? Is that okay?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, okay.
All right. I'm just restarting my UFT basically. Just open that test again. And I can either go back to my test and open it, or it usually shows on the recent also. So you can just open one in the recent. So we did that. Let's create another function, and we'll go with this time we'll do a descriptive program. Just name it. Descriptive programming. And so this time we know that we can do the object repository, and we can share the object repository and reuse those. But what if we are actually completely avoid the object repository and come with a descriptive programming? So in descriptive programming, you're basically describing the object properties inside your code, not instead of using the object repository. You will describe everything inside your code, telling, okay, I'm gonna provide all these properties and values inside my code, and I will reuse it over and over. And we can create function out of the descriptive programming for each object. So let's say we can create a function for a button. So we just create one function for button, and we just going to use that over and over. It will help us to minimize our coding and can just reuse across our team. So let's say if we were to create the browser objects, right, and page. So let's say if we want to do a browser, right? Now it's not giving me, if I put a parenthesis here, it's not giving me anything, because the reason is because inside my descriptive programming local repository, I don't have anything in there. But if I say, okay, I would like to use the object repository, it's giving me an option to associate my objects. So just going backward, actually, what we did, the shared object repository. So if I'm going back to my object repository folder, and I have mortgage calculator, and I associate it. Now, if I say remove the bracket, and if I say this, it brings the object repository automatically, because it recognizes that object repository is in my local, right? I'm just going to remove that just to show you, how do you see that, if the object is there or not. So parentheses, and it doesn't give me anything. So now I don't have any object repository, right? I can say, okay, what can I tell to identify if I want to describe this instead of object repository? So basically you do. There are two ways to scripting using descriptive technique. Actually, one is descriptive object, basically description of the objects and the description of the strings. So we provide the value and the property name. So if I want to spy on the page I have here, let's open up and move my cursor here, and I'm just clicking anywhere. And what I will do, I'll just click on browser because we are just gonna describe the browser right now. And when you highlight the browser, and there are something you can do, highlight it, make sure it highlights, and there is something called add to object repository. If we were to use the object repository, we click on this. This is another way of adding to the object repository, but since we are not using object repository for this, now we're gonna click on copy to clipboard. So click copy and cancel it out. So just gonna paste it here, and comment out all this just to show you this, what property we can use. So for the browser, you see the name, class name is a browser, and it has all these properties. On the left side, these are the property name. And so what do we have? Property, keys, and values, right? So on the left, we have properties. On the right, we have value equal to value. This is the class name, and this is the value of the class name. Same thing goes for ABX, ABS, and X underscore X, and it has some number. Those are that's Y coordinate. We don't use those usually. And then we have, bunch of other. Because of it's the browser, it tells also, okay, which browser it is, Internet Explorer 11, and so and so forth. And it has some other properties and its values. So how do you actually use it to identify if you are in the correct page or not? So remember, if we go back to our shared object repository, and if we click on the browser, just on the browser, I'm just going to expand it. This is our browser, right? Mortgage calculator was the name. And we only had the creation time, right? And we also enabled the smart identification. But as I explained before, if you want to just read to the first browser, all you have to use the creation time equal to 0. So I'm just going to use creation time equal to 0. I'm just closing it. So if I say creation time, the way you write is going to be put colon equal to 0. And this is the whole thing. This has to go inside a string. So the way you define is creation time colon equal to 0. Close the bracket and say, if I say, okay, now it's give me some options. Let's say highlight it, right? Highlights. And I'm just going to run it, see if actually it recognizes the first browser, whatever it's open in the page, right? See, it's highlights. So basically, here I'm not using any object repository for this descriptive program. I don't have anything on the object repository. It still highlights it based on the property and its value. So basically, we can describe the objects by the property and their value. And similarly, I can say, okay, if I don't want to use this, I can also use that. This is another way of doing. If I say, okay, instead of creation time, can I use the title? Is there any other property here? Or title name of the browser? There is something called title, right? Mortgage calculator. Let's copy this one and basically you copy the same thing. It also does the same way, colon, title colon equal to mortgage calculator. So all you have to do is basically copy anything inside the string, double quotation, and you can say, okay, paste it here and remove the previous quotation. So I said title equal to mortgage calculator. I'm just commenting out this one. I'm just running this line only. Run from the step. It's also highlighted. So for the browser, it's pretty straightforward. Either you can use just the creation time or the title. Most likely title would be the best approach, but if you see the title is not recognizing, you can implement the regular expression to do that. Also, you can say, okay, let's say you don't know the title. Title is keep on changing. Today it's saying mortgage calculator on the title, where we just copied from here, right? But tomorrow you see, okay, it's, the developer changed the code and they want to say, okay, title underscore mortgage calculator, something like one, right? If I do say, okay, run. Just waiting there, right? It's not doing. It's going to wait until the synchronization point, whatever the time was set as a default, and it will just throw an error. It's not highlighting because we changed to underscore one, right? It doesn't know which browser. There is no browser. It's saying title equal one. So it's saying cannot identify the objects. Verify that the object property match an object currently displayed. It's basically telling the same way we did with the object repository, right? But now we are doing a descriptive. We are just defining everything inside our code, and it's saying it gives the basically same stuff to do it run mode. For the descriptive programming, this thing does not apply because this line tips does not apply. We are not implementing object repository, but it gives that error, same error. Let's say stop. So how do you handle it? So let's say tomorrow you come, developer change to 1, and the next day you run it, it's saying 2 or something. But you know that mortgage calculator name is going to be always same. But whatever it's going to change is at the end of this, right? So you can say, okay, dot star, and say you can just remove the whole thing. You can say, okay, any title. You can say this to title equal to dot star. Basically, any title of the first of the browser. Default is the browser 1. Basically, one browser. Whatever you see it, any title, just go to that, recognize that browser. If I run it, I said just dot star. Remember we showed regular expression earlier, and if I highlight it, it's gonna highlight the first one because it knows only one browser open, and I said title equal to 1. Similarly, you can say creation time as I mentioned here, and so on. So let's do the same thing for the page, right? So we know the browser. You can copy that and let's comment out. And we don't need any of this. You can try to use different value, but most likely for the browser, you'll be using either creation time or the title. These two items, property you will be using for the browser. And so this was our property for the browser. Now we can spy it again. Go back, spy, click anywhere. It doesn't matter as long as you select the page. We're just gonna select the page. Highlight it. It's gonna select highlight it same. And same thing, copy and paste it here, right? Or just the properties showing? Yeah, there are only few properties scheming. So in the page, see the class name, page, and whatever other properties, name equal nothing, text equal nothing, but the title equals the mortgage calculator. So we can use the same one because this is the one we think is unique. It's always coming. If you, while you're developing your test, you'll know by then, saying, okay, these are the things it's matching every time I record it. So I'm just going to use that is always, showing on the spy. So next thing we'll do, okay, page. just type the page object and same thing, parentheses and double quote and title equal to mortgage calculator, close the bracket, and then click on done, and same thing, highlight. You want to highlight the page, right? So we know the browser, we know the page. So if I were to just run this, please stop me if something is not clear. And you can also, yeah.
Question. Don't you have to tell in a descriptive programming what browser to open? I know you're saying browser, creation time, or title. Don't you have to say what browser to open? For example, IE, Chrome, or Firefox? Or why is that? Why aren't we telling?
No, since I'm working on, I know that assuming that this browser is open, this is the browser we are working on. But I can add those lines because we already created that function, right?
Yeah. No, I'm saying like
Remember?
since you open that one, so you don't have to say it in a descriptive programming. Open it again. Is that what you're saying?
The opening the browser has the other way of doing it. As we look to our function, right? Open browser. You go to the function. We just gonna call that function. There is nothing else you need to describe because it's already only thing we are doing is saying system util run and take me to that URL, right? So we know that already. We can just call that function and do it because this function already has been written. So let's do it while we are here. So as soon as, let's say we already have a function, right? So I know that function name is called open browser. All I have to do type open. If you don't know exact spelling, but you know the first word, let's say you know just O, right? If you click O, it's give me a bunch of options that related to O, right? And then you start type, okay, let me try P. Then it's give me, okay, I see I have something called open browser. It's already built in. You just select that one and press space. It asks you to provide those arguments, browser and the URL. So we know the browser is IE, right? I can directly say Internet Explorer, or it's just based on the function library, whatever the function library actually built in whenever the developer coded, whoever developed this function. Let's say in this case, Greg did this, right? So, or if you are doing it, or even Shamam did it, or Brother Siddiq did it.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah. So you will be reusing that function. You never need to write this function again and again. This is done. This is done for your entire system. I mean, you can basically copy this function and use it any other group, or help other groups if they need it. So only thing we know that this function looks for the XTR browser equal either IE or Internet Explorer or lowercase Internet Explorer. If none of this true, it automatically goes saying, okay, browser not found, right? So we know that IE or Internet Explorer. Let's go back to our the browser. So we just say IE, we are opening IE, and then we provide that URL. We can also say, okay, URL equal to mortgage calculator. We know that. I'm just going to copy that URL here, whatever your URL is. Oops, it did not. Right click, copy, and we can say this, right? And it's going to launch the browser automatically for us, right? Or we can just say, okay, take this. I'm not going to put it here. I will create a variable called dstr URL, and just say str URL equal to that browser, right? I mean that URL, and I can just say use it here. Also, we can implement inside the. Let's say we can also do something. We can add here. We can add another line to this application, this function. Inside this function, we can say, okay, system util and type run close process by name. We want to implement that close process by name inside our function. if we want to. I'm just showing you just how to close any previous browser open, right? And you can just say, okay, I explore .exe. It will also close the browser here, or you can, if you don't want to, code it here because you might need it for some other reason, you can just comment out here and go to your descriptive. Before you launch any browser, you want to just close it, right? Similarly, you can do that too. Okay, let's run it and run from here because we are running only this action. See, my results is keep building up every time I'm running. So I'm just gonna select the temporary one for now. So it's closed my previous browser and open my browser here, and then if I continue running it, click on it, and it's gonna highlight it, right? So no object repository was used on this action. And okay, by the way, I want to show you another thing. If you go to your, I think, tools, options, GUI, run test, you can set to normal execute, or you can make it faster. Like it's gonna run like, way faster than what it does actually. Instead of running, you won't see one after one. It's gonna go after, as soon as it sees, it's gonna do that. So you can do that setting as well. And automatically, there are another thing I want to show you. Like if you don't want to see the results every time, you can also remove that from your file settings. Run. I think I saw it somewhere.
But wouldn't you want to see a result every time?
Yeah, if you don't want to see the results every time, like let's say,
So like when you become expert.
Right, yeah.
Okay, got it.
Right. No, this was I was showing to, if you want to run it faster. This is what you will be using. If you think it's consuming a lot of time to execute, you can just go to your options and GUI test and then run test runs and select this one. It will run faster than the regular mode, right? But for now, leave it as normal so we can see it, how it's actually running. There would automatically, there will be something should say results view. Okay, general. Okay, run sessions. View results when the test run sessions ends, right? When you uncheck this, what it does actually, every time you run, it's not gonna show the results thing again. So let's just comment out this function and this function. I'm just gonna show you how it actually works and run from here. So all you have to, then you have to manually click on that results icon right here and run it, highlighted, done, right? See, now I don't have the results coming up, right? So all you have to do is click on last run results, and you can see it this way. If this bothers you a lot, you can actually do that as well. Okay, so we came up to, we know how to actually describe the browser and page in a descriptive programming. Same way, if you don't know, if you think if the title of the page is keep on changing, you can just say ***. It will just look for the first browser and the first page, and we'll do the same thing. Basically providing a regular expression. Remember to use the regular expression. This is a keyword, and it's just going to say any title, whatever the title name for the browser. I'm looking for anything. It doesn't matter whatever it shows, because if you're only working on one application, you are actually opening this, so it's by default already, we know we are in the mortgage calculator page, right? So we can say that also. But alternatively, if you are working with multiple tests, two tabs open, and you want to specifically say which browser it is, then you can actually tell. So let's go this here. Let's say google.com, right? I have to give you example so you will get clear understanding. I have one mortgage calculator, another one is Google page, right? So now I say any browser, and now here I'm just gonna go back to my mortgage calculator, right? And run from the step. So why is it waiting actually? Any idea why it's just waiting? It's just not highlighting it. It's not doing anything, right? Just waiting whatever the sync time is given. Does it tell
It's
anything?
synchronization time. That's why I was waiting, right?
So it's waiting, but it doesn't recognize, because I'm trying to highlight the mortgage calculator page, but it is not highlighting.
But
why?
yeah, because first you said ignore everything after the mortgage title, or the first browser. So probably
Right.
not.
I said in this line, I said, if you look at this title browser, I said any browser, right? I say any browser open, right?
Hmm.
So since I have two tabs open in the browser, right? So it doesn't know which one to
Which
go.
one to
This
highlight?
one, yeah. Remember we mentioned about creation time. Like if you say creation time is 0, it's gonna highlight the first one. If it's creation time 2, it's going to highlight this, but it will look for. Secondly, it will look for the page.
Got it.
Okay. So let's change it a little bit here. Let's say I know the any browser, I can add another property. Remember in the object property we had multiple properties you could use. Simply press comma here and double quote. Inside the double quote I say creation time, or you can use index colon space equal to, or you can just leave it as how it is written, and then I say 0, right? And run it. Creation time 0, mortgage calculator, right? So let's run it again and see highlights it. What is doing? Oops, I think I click on this one. If I close this one, it's gonna highlight. Go back to Google. Just gonna wait and throw an error. Okay, let's stop it. Okay, so now I said the creation time 1, and then I also said the mortgage calculator title. But since there are 2 of them, first one is any title, first one, and then mortgage calculator. It just throw an error. Basically, it's not passing. So in order for us to tell, if I want to do, okay, let's put mortgage calculator equals dot star, and we know the page, but we are looking at the first creation time. And now run it again. Still gonna fail. So this how do you actually troubleshooting this kind of scenario? The best thing to do is a spy. Get yourself habit on using the spy, object spy. It basically tells everything.
Do we know why did it fail?
Yes, we know.
Can you tell
Because
me,
it gets
please?
confused. It knows the browser. I'm saying, okay, creation time 1, but also I'm telling the any title. So since I have on the page, I have one has any title and second one is any title. I mean, I'm looking
Okay,
for
so it's
the
looking for
Google
both
page
of them. Title.
and yes. So the best thing you can do is just highlight the one you want to do. Let's say I'm highlighting the Google. Not responding. You have to tell, okay, not this one, the other one, mortgage calculator. All you have to do, highlight it, go to your browser and page, and get the title name. It's basically the same name, but name, title. I'm not seeing the title here. Okay, right here. Okay. And then all you have to do, provide that title. If you think anything changed, put just star after the name, so it's just gonna use this. And same thing goes for this as well. Just the title and the creation time. So 1 equal to 0. Right. The wrong number of argument, browser. Did you make any spelling error or anything wrong here? Browser title, mortgage calculator, and then creation time, extra 0. Okay. So if you encounter this kind of error, what you would do is basically you can just add it to your object repository, see what it actually recorded. So best thing you can do is just click on add and click here and just select page, right? Just select page. See what is actually get recorded. Sorry, just select any object, just click on it. So now you can say, okay, when I recorded, it's saying creation time is 0 and it got smart identification. But if I want to make it false and add more, this is the way you actually troubleshoot and select this, right? Highlight it. So it is looking for the title name, mortgage calculator. Let's see, our description is same as the one we actually showing on the object repository. Okay. So we know our page is mortgage calculator. We have creation time 1, and our smart identifier is true. So we're gonna make it false, and let's highlight it. So it highlights this. So we can say this creation time is 0, and we can take this out. Let's take the title out and leave it as the creation time. Creation time 0, and the page itself we can say, okay, title, right, mortgage calculator, and then it highlights the page as well. So let's close it and highlight it, see if it actually does it. Then if it doesn't, then we have to look for some other properties. What if I close the browser of the Google? Does it highlight? Can anyone see anything I made? Any error here? Anything in this line? Sometimes you have to look at the lines if there are spelling or anything error. Anything? You see that colon I put it here?
Okay, just by looking at it, is it title? Linear.
So anytime you see this type of it's not working, how come it's not working well? When I add it into my object repository, it is highlighting. I mean, actually giving the same description as my object repository in my descriptive programming, right? I gave the creation time equal to 0, which is creation time is 0 for the browser. And same thing I did for the mortgage calculator. I used just the mortgage calculator. But what error I made is here. Actually, I actually, when I copy,
Equivalent and semicolon.
yeah, right. Yeah. Anything? So let's go back to our previous line. So this is the line we created for the browser, right? Let's copy and paste one and remove this one. Do it again, and then dot page, right? And then we can say, okay, quotation title. We know the title. Remember in the object repository, we had for the page, we had the title equal to mortgage calculator. We probably typed it wrong or something not correct. Title colon equal to mortgage calculator, right? Double quote, close it. Let's not use the object repository, yeah, the other one. So highlight. See if it actually works. Okay, now we have to open another tab. Just Google. So we have two tabs open right now. One is here, one there, right? Okay, let's go on it. Good, right? Even we have two of them, it did. So let's make another line here, and this time we're just gonna say Google, highlight the Google, right? And run from that, only that line. It's looking for the creation time equal to 1. If we change it to 1, it should work. So it's still not highlighting. Let's stop it and then change back to 1. Does it make sense now? So the first one we said, okay, creation time, first browser, which is a 1. I mean 0. 0 start is the 0 is the like a work as index creation time. You can say index also, but creation time is the useful one. And when you say 0, it's saying okay. When you look on the browser, it's gonna look for the first one. So we know that by 0, we are highlighting the first one. Let me move it a little bit on the left. So make this to the left. Okay. So this line highlights the mortgage calculator, and if I increment by 1, if I add 1, it's highlight the creation time, which is the Google, and then by the title name, it knows which title to give. So if it's 2 tabs, you have to say, okay, this is the second tab or second browser, and then whatever on the second, once you recognize the browser, then you want to tell, whatever the page name of that browser. Make sense? So if I just say, okay, instead of Google, if I say, just .star, right, for this one, for the second one, I'm just running line number 20 right now, and right mouse click and run. Okay, so the reason why it highlighted the Google application is because it knows I'm on the second tab already, right? It already, if you are inside the car, you know which car seat you have to take based on the title or whatever the car seat. So you know, you already distinguish between the two browsers. First browser is the mortgage calculator, second browser is the Google, right? Okay, let's put it this way. Sign in on the Google. Let's not use the creation time. We're going to use the just the title for the browser as well. Just hang. The remember UFT actually use a lot of memory when you run it. That's why sometimes it actually does that. If you see it a lot, just restart the UFT and it should, fix the issue. So do we see anything with the title? Okay, Google, right? It's the same name. If we remove creation time and just put title here, which is a Google, and same thing we can do. Okay, we can just copy this line and provide the same for the browser because it's actually looking for the same. This way, I'm telling my browser title is mortgage calculator and page title also the same, right? And the second one of my browser title is Google and the page title is, I can say either if I'm inside the browser, I can say anything in when you get to the Google browser, just highlight the title, any title you see. So once it's already here, it can highlight it. So we can leave it as it is, or you can just say, okay, whatever the title name for the Google, I think it's most likely Google, right? And let's run from debug. Now, say it automatically went to the mortgage. Now, if I highlight it, it's automatically highlight Google based on the information given here. So these are two different ways you can do it. Either provide a title name, or you can set it, creation time as 1, which is going to be the second tab, second browser, or the creation time 0, which is going to be the first one. Does it make sense, or do you want me to create another browser?
There's a question. It says, what is creation time means on the chat box.
Okay, creation time mean is like the concept is index, right? Index. It's like when you say creation time, whatever whenever you launch the application, it generates a random index number, which is the first one is going to be 0, second one is 1. That's basically the creation time value. It's just go by in order.
Is there same as the title, the creation time?
No, creation time is not same as title. Creation time, that is one property you can use. Index is also another property you can use. These are properties.
So creation time is how long it's taking it for it to load? Is that what it is?
No. It's not taking how much it's taking to load. Creation time is, do you know what is index is? Index is like it's like a look at like car 1 has the index 0, car 2 has index 1, car 3 has index 3. It's like a going in order. So remember we did something here. I think Greg actually shows. If you look at the drop down list, right? So if I say select 0 index is gonna first one, second one, third one, fourth one, and it's gonna start from the very beginning, saying okay, if I were to select the first one, 0, 1, 2, 3. Same thing goes for the tabs. Like you have tabs 1, I can say creation time is 0 or index equals 0. For the second one, creation time 1 or index is 1.
Okay,
It's
so
like
it's just for the
it's like
tabs.
yeah, for
Okay.
tab or index number could be for anything. So if I were to, let's say I have
But it's
interest
like
rate,
creation time specifically for the tabs, the index?
basically yes, creation time
Okay.
you will be using for browser and the page, yeah, because you
For
want to,
descriptive programming.
yes, because
Okay.
you know when you add it in the object repository, it also recorded that as a 0. If you go to your shared object repository and click on down the page, it see that index number.
Mhm.
And if you click on here, okay, I have to enable it in order for me to edit. And you see that little dot
Can
here.
I
It has
can
like
I add
index.
something?
Yeah.
So I think the index number, basically it lists the numbers. So it could list either horizontally or vertically, right? So it starts from 0 and it goes on. So that's what it
Yeah.
basically means. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Basically,
Yeah.
you are giving,
List of
let's say,
numbers.
in list of numbers. Yeah. Basically, it goes in order, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So anytime you say index or creation time, it's gonna start from 0, and it will go. 0 is gonna be first item. 1 is second item. 2 is third item. So you have to kind of remember index start from 0 creation. That's gonna be interview question, because what does actually index 0 define? You can answer it is the first item or first items or first list of item you are looking for, the first item on the browser or the first browser or the first item on the list. So if we were to go to the drop down list here, we can say, if I say index 0 is going to be, it will take the January 1st, January. And if I say index 1, and it's going to select the second one. So let's do this one quickly so it will make more sense. I'm just going to, because I haven't gone to that, descriptive for the other objects. We're just working on the browser and page. We haven't gone to list of other objects in our the object repository, right? So if I click on here, right, and I have a web list, right? Let's add it here and let's drag it here. So this is just object repository. How you can tell? It's coming from object repository, this whole line, right? We have worked until here, right? See how different it looks? It has a colon and then comment. Another way you can tell, right mouse click, it doesn't have anything in there. It's saying cut or paste, nothing else. But if you click on here, this one is going to say object properties. And if you click on that, it takes you to the object repository. So that way you can tell it is coming from the object repository. This is more of descripting. So and this is descriptive programming, right? DP. Okay. So the reason why I'm saying here, if I say, let's say, tab, right? This is the name it's showing on the list on our web page. Let's close the Google, and I'm just selecting January 1st, so we know what it's selecting. And run it. So what did it select? It select February, right? So now, where does the February fall? 0, 1, right? 1. But if I want to select March, right? Let's go back here. Instead of this, I can say, or select February again. Let's move it back to January, or just leave it here. The default is this name is here, but I want to select only February. How can I do other way? So by providing on the list, so the index, you can use it for the list, web list. See the keyword web list, anything has a drop down, you can select by the index. Let's say you say, okay, I'm just gonna say 0, right? I think there is a hash or something, or because February was the second one, so I just say 1, right? And let's see what it does. Okay, give me error. Cannot identify the item. It's saying item. It's not identifying. So the way we use it, we have to provide something called hash, or this hash is actually telling me this is the format of using the select with the index. So if I had to run it again, so when you use the hash sign, you can either tell the name itself or you can use the index. So if I say now 0, my first index, right, 0, and it will select January, and whatever number you want to select by the index. So it's a list of order by 0, and list goes on and on as long as you want, or whatever number you want to select. So now it's January. So let's say if I say, okay, instead of index 0, let me say 10 here. What month it will select? Anyone? If I said 10 here, index number.
Oh,
It's gonna be November.
it'll choose.
Okay, let's see. Excellent. Yeah, it's November. So basically the 10 is basically the 11 number I'm selecting. So index start from 0 and it goes to the second one. So just remember that, and that should help you. Similarly, the creation time also does the same thing. But this is how we actually use when you select, only when you use this index inside a quotation, you have to provide that hash before that. But for the scripting, you don't need to do that inside here. It's only the items you are selecting from here. All right. So we know the browser and mortgage calculator and page. What we want to do is, we already did that. So let's put it into the with statement on this, right? We know that we created the, if I say with, we already know what is with actually mean, and then and with. So what I'm saying is, start with browser and page, which is a mortgage calculator. Anything I write here is gonna already know, it will know I'm inside the mortgage calculator. So let's do some more descriptive programming, right? So I can say, okay, web button, right? If I want to click on something, or let's say we'll do the first one, home value. It's a web edit, I think, or web number. Let's highlight it with a spy. You'll be interacting with the spy on and off every time, and highlight that, and it's web number objects, and copy that and close it. Okay, so remember we have a properties here, and then we have on the right side is the value of this property, whatever property. So class name is web number, and then all these properties. So now if we want to only use this web, we know we did the browser, we did the page, now we want to do the web number, right? And we can say, because we are using the web number, and we have to provide that dot here, because every time you use the browser and then you say dot, and then this is your with statement already. Okay, let's move the with statement for now. We'll come back to it. I think it might confuse you. So just use this as a one line. Later we'll make it clear. So we say that's the web number, right? That's my object class I'm using, and then I'm gonna put some properties and values. So we know the class name is web. So what can we use here? So let's go back to our object repository, the one we recorded. So we are working on home value, right? So home value, we use something called type, name, tag. These are properties we used. And if I remove the smart identification from here, does it highlight it? I'm just going to make sure it does highlight it, then we can just use those. So it highlights, right? So we know the type, name, and HTML tag. Let's close it. And so type, where is the type here? Okay, type is number. We can just simply copy that and actually remove those quotations we are copying. So we took the type, and now we are, what is the other item? We had 3, right? Name and tag. Do I see the name here? Okay, we see the tag here, HTML tag. We can copy that also and put it inside the comma. So those are the list items showing on the other one, the object repository, right? So we took the type, we took the HTML tag, we need the name now. This is how you describe. So where is the name? Am I not seeing it? Okay, name right here, right?
44.
Yeah. Okay, good. See, in the name, it's automatically when you copy it. Remember I said backslash before its special character? It is the regular expression automatically generated for you. So you can just use that as it is. But in the object repository, it doesn't have that, right? If you go back, it doesn't have those special correct these backslash. If we had it, we had something dot star here. So let's not worry about that now. Just copy the as it is. So we use 3 properties and their value. So now this is my description of that specific web number, which is the home value, right? So let's say highlight it, right? We want to highlight that object. We can say it's highlight, and this has to be commented out because otherwise it's going to throw an syntax error. So we understood so far browser, page. Now we are working inside the page, that property. The property was the web number, and which has some properties. We know these are the properties. So let's run it and we'll go from there. Answer any questions you have. See, so now we don't have object, right? We are describing everything inside here. We're just telling we are hard coding, writing everything inside this instead of using the object. How can you tell? You can tell by the property name we gave, type, we gave the HTML tag, we gave the name property, and all the value for each of these, and we started here. And you also can right mouse click, it doesn't give me any property. Whereas the other one, if we go to our object repository, let's copy let's look at the object repository and drag it here. So it will give us some more understanding on that. All right, so I'm just going to expand it. We know we are working on home value, right? Let's drop it here. So you'll see the difference between the object repository and the descriptive programming. This is just the basic of descriptive programming. See how it is? Because it just took the logical name here and all the properties, anything we are showing here for the home value. Let's look at the home value. It just gave us the name, logical name, but if you look inside the object repository, right mouse click, it brings you, actually it's not showing it here because actually I drag it from the other object repository. So I have to add that into my local object repository. I drag it from this object repository, which belongs to the mortgage calculator DT. That's why it's not getting it. I have to have it in the local, or I have to share this with this action. Either way. So let's just add that in there. And home value. And rename it home value. And see, it actually recognized. Now it recognized, right? It is coming because I added in the object repository. So this the line number 25 is coming from object repository, and the line number 23 is coming from, it is descriptive programming. So I'm describing this line. Now I can make it much more clean and saying, okay, with statement, and then I know this always be same page and browser will be always same. So I can start from there and just, I can say, okay, I can write that, okay, web element, and then highlight it. And with, but similarly, instead of, I was showing is highlight, right? We can say okay, dot, and we want to type, because this web number actually types something in the web page. So if I want to say type, there is no method saying type in there. So the only method we can use here is called set. Sets the value in the numeric edit box, right? So numbers only. So we can, we can provide some number here, whatever we want, right?
Yeah. Hey, can you please explain between the difference between set and select?
Okay. So yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, select, right? So let's add the select one, and or in the object repository, and we'll also do that select also into the object descriptive and the. So if select is anything has a drop down list, those are the select one. It's going to be web list, and if I add this, let's name it. What was it? The name of the application? This thing. It's saying start. We can say start month, right? This is a month. So let's start month and drop it here. So you can see by default it's saying select. So set is actually you can set some value. Select is basically you can select some item. So when you say set, it means if you press an F1 on the set, right? It takes me to the reference model of HP too, and it explains what it tells. Oops, let me close it again and go back. Okay, if you move your cursor right there and press F1 on your keyboard, second one after escape, right? It's saying set is a method, and it's
Sam?
the hello.
Sam, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, actually, select is you cannot edit, right? On select.
Exactly. Yeah, you cannot. You can only select items. You cannot edit. Basically, you cannot write anything, type anything on that if you are using select method. Select method will allow you to select the item from the list, web list. So anytime you see the object is saying okay web list, you only will be using the select or other types, not set. So let's go. Let's press dot, and do I see select here? Select, but do I see set here? If I type set, no, it doesn't give me that option, because you cannot set anything in there. You cannot type anything. Set is basically type. You are in Java or any other method, not in Selenium. When you do Selenium, you'll see that it's going to say instead of set, it's going to say type. It's a basically same concept. When you set something, it allows you to type something on the page. But on the other hand, if you say select, it's actually allowing you to select an item, not typing anything. And it tells if you select it, select the specified item in the list, replacing any previous selected values. What it means actually, whatever the items is already selected by default, and if you want to select like November, it's going to replace by January, right? When you say select. So that's what it does. Amit, does it make sense?
Yes, makes perfect
Somewhere?
sense. Thank you. No, it makes sense.
Okay. Okay. If not, I mean, just move your cursor, press F1. That document will automatically comes up. It also explains different way.
I got it, Sam. Thanks.
Okay. So we were explaining that was a descripting. So let's do that same thing for the web list, right? So we can we can right mouse click in there, and then we just go to our properties. What property we use? We know use name and HTML tag when it's recorded, right? So we can just say, okay, spy it, or we can just copy it from the object repository. But let's get ourselves into habit of spying it. Copy. This time I'm selecting the web list, right? And I'm removing these items. So now our property name, the class name, and the web list, which is the objects in here. And if I say dot, and I can just type it here basically and put the double close and open bracket and close bracket, I can start collecting what property we use. Always use the HTML tag. That's something you want to use. HTML tag we have, okay, right here. The HTML tag itself is telling us is to select. There are some clue you will find as you practice. You will know, okay, this one is it's actually telling me input. So it tells if I say input, that means it has some relationship in there. Why the input is there? Because you can actually input some data or type some data or set some data. Whereas the HTML tag for the web list is saying select. Basically, you can select an item. That's another way of looking into that objects. So next item we want to select is going to be the name, I think. Okay, name here, and just going to select, copy everything inside the double quotation and paste here. And I can just say, okay, dot. Now I want to select, right? And I can say either index number 01, I mean hash 0, or I can say, okay, I want to select, January, right? Which is the way it's spelled is Jan. So when you select something from the drop-down list, you want to make sure the spelling is correct as it's showing on the list. If you put a space or anything, you have to remove those, or you have to apply another function to actually do that job. So let's say I'm going to select June, right? So I can say these are the items we just use for the object repository. I'm just commenting out here, and I can say JUN, June, right? And just actually, I just need to comment out this because this is going to give you a lot of error. I'm not commenting out. So let's say Control F7, right? If I press Control F7, give me a lot of error here, right? These are the syntax error. And because it doesn't know what are these, so we have to kind of comment it out this, and then Control F7, it's gonna say syntax is valid. So now if I run it, it's gonna set this number and it's gonna select June. So run it. It was selected before, but we can change it to, or you can, let's say accidentally you made an error space here, right? See that if you didn't know, you put a space in there before or after, whatever. Let's say, maybe before, right? And after, you just copy it from somewhere and accidentally you put it in the space before and after. How can you handle that too? So
you can use trim.
Exactly. Yeah, you remember. Nice. The trim will help you to remove those space before and after, right? And it's give me they could not identify the specified item, right? Because that item has a space and it doesn't know it. When it's selecting, it's trying to select with space before and after, so it doesn't know what to select. And the another way of you can get rid of, as Meet just mentioned, trim. And if you put bracket, it's giving me option. It can only accept string. The string is inside a quotation, so you already know, right? And if I say this, let's see, try trim and see if it works. it's selected, right? So, these are good practice to utilize this function. This is another function built in. They already coded for you how to work on it. We don't have to code for it. So if you want to know more about trim, just press F1, and F1, it's going to give you the syntax, how to use it, dot select and items. And because now it's giving me the syntax for the select. Actually, I put my cursor maybe wrong place. So let's put F trim. It's not bringing in. Okay, you can type here also. Just search by trim, and it will bring some objects already there. It did not. Something is not right here. Okay, let me do this. Just type trim here.
You have to highlight it and then press F1.
Okay, so yeah, this actually, I guess the select method is actually interacting here, conflicting with the trim. So that's why it recognized the first one, because I think it's looking for the trim. That's why. So if you see anything is not bringing the right one, just type it in different line and just press F1. It will take you to use different types. L trim is the left trim, right trim, and just trim. If you just use trim, it will work for both left and right. But if you just want to use for the left space, you want to remove the left space, you just use the left one, and L trim and the R trim. And it also gives an example of how to use it, and with the different examples, so you can see it here and practice it. You can copy those code and paste it here and practice it as well. Okay, so this is all about the descriptive programming. This is the basic starting, because we'll be creating some other functions and methods to work on different types of function you can create. So like next session when we go, or if you guys joining in the group session, I'm going to go a lot more into details on the descriptive programming, object repository, make it more clear, because it is obvious, like it's a lot of information for you all. That's why we open the group session, and we are ready to help anytime that you need help. Just put it on the chat window when you need it. If any of us is available to help, and we'll just jump on and make sure you understand this, because once you get clear understanding all this, it will be easier for you. Think of like starting the day you started, and now if you actually had something, you learned something so far now, and you know some object repository, how it works, what is automation is all about, what is manual testing, all this because you actually came to this class and learn how we actually explained, or probably you did your own research, and however way you get it, you kind of know the difference between a month from now, I mean a month ago and now. So there is a difference. So if you do it, continue it, 1 month later you will know much more, and then it will continue. You will gradually get it. It's not a one-day thing is to get it. It's a practice, and asking question, and try to get clear understanding of anything that is not clear in here. Make sure you join those group sessions and make yourself available. If you can, if any of those schedule is not right fit for you, let us know. We'll work with you and make sure you are in the right track, because this is the best opportunity. We are putting our time as much as we could to help you to get the job that you're looking, and whatever your goal is. And once you get in there, we'll continue to provide support to help you if you encounter anything in the future. Let's say you are in the job and you're facing difficulties with something, we are there. We'll continue to be there as long as you need it, because this is how it works. Because we don't want to put you in some place where you are just blind, not knowing where to go. So we want to make sure you're comfortable with everything, and understand the material. If not, we'll go over and over. It's not easy sometimes for some people to get everything at one shot. It's a lot of information, but a lot of them will be repeated over and over. Make sure if you don't put yourself or let us know, we wouldn't know, how much you learn. So that's why I encourage everyone to at least do some mentoring session. Mentoring session is a way of knowing how much I know and, discussing with the teammates. Basically, our team is whoever joined today and yesterday. Some people are, not joining, but they are actually online. They can't manage to come here, so they watch, videos and practice themselves and communicate it with us. And we have, another session going on for Java and Selenium. So we keep on doing things back and forth, make sure you're getting it. You might not get, what I'm explaining, but if somebody else explain it, you might get that in a different way. So it's always this way, and it's been this way forever. And one person cannot make another person understand it. You have to look at it in a different angle, viewpoint. So that's why I encourage everyone, keep yourself involved in the Google Hangout. If you are not in the Google Hangout, please let me know. You will be getting a lot of information, and and make yourself available so we can actually help you with that. We are available anytime you need it. So I'm thinking of taking a break. If you guys okay, or we can continue a few more minutes, and I think if Greg is going to take over after the lunch, and he will go over some of the stuff you did yesterday. Basically, the functions, you need to get understanding on those functions. We have been doing it. You will be using all these functions throughout your coding, anywhere you do the descriptive programming. So let me know if you have any question not understanding.
Hey, Shamsa, I can continue on. I can continue on with the descriptive programming too.
Oh, okay, yeah, that would be awesome, because I think they get some idea, but we have to make sure that how to create a let's say specific object for web list or web button, and make that reusable for over and over. And that's
Okay.
what they need to know. Efficiency is the main goal of automation.
All right. Can you zip up that test and put it in the folder, and I'll grab it.
Okay, so
file
yeah.
Go to file export test, and then export as a zip file. Import it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll do that. Yeah. So is that a good time to take break half an hour and come back half an hour later, and Greg will continue, or however way you want it. So put it on the chat box or speak up.
Let's take a break.
Okay, let's take now is okay. This is the global time. Now is 11:45. Let's come back. How much time you want to take a break for? I don't know. 45 minutes. 1:30. Is that good?
Yeah, 1:30 is good. Thank you.
Okay, we'll see you 1:30. Yesterday we went a little longer, but let us know if you want to stop it at some point after 2:30. If you want to continue, also we can continue as long as needed. But more of it's all about you. It's not how much you can actually grab and brainstorm. So we'll take 30 minutes break and we'll come back.
If we can adjust the time. So
Hello, everyone. This is Greg. Is everyone back from lunch? All right. If you're there, go ahead and open up. Like if you have from yesterday, you're gonna click on File, Add, and we're just gonna add in that same test that we had yesterday, the existing test. We're gonna add in the practice practice functions. Just click Add, and then you should have 2 tests open. All right, I think Amit had some questions yesterday about the arrays that he wanted to go over, and then I'll go back to the descriptive programming that Shamsu was covering earlier and show you that there's different ways.
Yeah, yeah. Can you scroll all the way to the top?
Yeah.
Okay, here, for starting from line 4, scroll down a little bit more, yeah, right here. Now it's trying to look at line 21 and 20 as well. Okay, so you declared a variable right here, and you called it string my string, right?
Right.
And then in the string result, you call my function string my browser, right? And then I think, yeah, yeah, those names kind of threw me off a little bit. If you could,
okay, got you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we could do this. We could do
No, you could. I mean, you could keep the same thing because I'm pretty sure the way you put it in, you put a logic behind it. So just like to hear, like, what was your thought behind it when you named? There
was no real thought behind that. I was just saying these are my strings that I was doing some string manipulation functions yesterday. So I was just showing you that these are my strings. Like I'm just giving you an example of a name. But string str result, I was showing that this is the result of the function, right? So we're calling this function, and I'm assigning the value that this. Whenever you see that equal sign, that means it's assigned, unless it's inside of a conditional statement where we're doing a comparison. We're saying if this is equal to that. Like if I want to say, if I'm inside of an if statement, if I want to say if 1 is equal to 2, right? I want to test different variables or something like that. That's not doing assignment. That's doing a comparison, you know. Or say if I'm comparing 2 variables, say if I want to do I counter with I counter 2, right? Say I'm doing a comparison, then otherwise the equal sign is assigning everything to the right of the equal sign to whatever on the left, to this variable over here. Okay.
Okay.
So string result, the value of this string result is whatever I'm going to assign to this function here, my function.
Oh, so okay, so you declared a variable and you're initializing the variable
with the value of this function. So I didn't initializing a variable means that you've given it initial value. I actually didn't initialize a string result variable. If I wanted to initialize it, I would do this. I would do str result equals double quote. That's initialization. Okay. So when you guys start taking Java and stuff like that, you typically do want to initialize everything, but you can do everything inline. It's a little bit easier to do it inline in Java than it is in VBScript. So when you guys are taking the next portion of the SDEC class, you'll be doing things like int. This did automatic correction, but int. Forget that it added that int I equals 0 semicolon. Okay, that'll be the format when you guys are taking your next class, or you'll be doing
Okay.
Yes, same thing.
Okay, can you read the line 29 and then explain what do you exactly mean by that? Okay.
This one here?
I'm sorry, no, 28. 28.
28, okay. Let me go ahead and delete this right here because this doesn't mean anything. All right, so we're back on line 28. We're saying, okay, so I initialized str result now, since you mentioned initialization. So I've initialized it to an empty string, right?
Okay.
So I'll add a comment there. Okay. Now the str result, this function is going to run, right? So when we get to line 28, it's going to see that, oh, we need to assign the value of my function, whatever my function is returning right here. We need to return that. We need to assign that value to this string result, right? So this is just a variable. We're assigning whatever my function is to string result, and then we're printing that out. So if we go down to my function here, my function is the name of the function that I'm creating, right? So I'm going down. Remember, this is the name of the function, is my function on line 31. Okay. Now we're going down, and
it's the same thing as like you say my function open browser, but you called it my function instead.
Exactly. So I'm going down, and I'm assigning the value right here. So my function equals string new text right here. So this is, I can put return okay. So on line 91, we're returning that value of string new text. So string new text right here is going to replace all the spaces. So we were doing to replace all the spaces in the string that we were passing. We were replacing all those spaces with no space. So we're just going to return a string with no spaces, and that would be what would be printed right here. Okay, so it would return "Welcome to Cyberbullying Greg" with nothing all together, no spaces. Got it?
Yeah.
All right. And now you had you said you had a question about the array as well. I know a lot of people had questions about arrays, so let's go through that real quick.
Yeah, I think it started from line 90, I believe.
Okay.
93.
Right.
Yeah.
93. All right. So again, arrays. Let's think of. I wish I could draw on here. Think of a. Have you guys ever seen like a vitamin box or anything like that, or a cubby with like multiple containers in it? Like think of an inline container. Oh, okay, just a table. So let me open up Microsoft Word or something. Can you guys see Microsoft Word?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to insert a table here. All right. All right, I have a table here, right? Actually, let me delete that. Hold on. All right, that's perfect. All right. So this, I have a table here in my Word document. Oops. Add some space. 1 second. Bear with me. All right. So we have a table, right? So I want to call this table pets, right? Okay. inside of this table of pets that we have, right? We have a table of pets, right? Or let's call it names for example. Instead, let's call it names. So these are the names of my classes. Everyone in this class, let's say, okay? Let's give a real world example. So we'll call this class underscore names, right? So this will be the name of my array, okay? So now, let's say we have, I'll just go down and we have Amit, we have Tasneem, Shamam, Selena, Shah. Okay, so these are the names of the people in my class. So like that, if I'm just capturing 5 of you guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the equivalent in my array, I would have, okay, how many people are in my class? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? I have 6 people. So I would have my array, if I the same way that we would express this in VB script, we would have dim class names, and then I would have 5, okay? Because there's 6, so arrays start with 0, the 0 index, right? So now let me go back up here to the table, okay? So I'm gonna assign an index. So up here, I'm just gonna put 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay? So think of an array as a way to store multiple things of the same class all together, right? So if I want to store 5 integers all together and I don't want to create integer 1, integer 2, integer 3, integer 4, integer 5, if I just want one object to store all of those similar, to store all of the similar object types, then I want to create an array, okay? Are you guys, do you understand that, Amit, or everyone?
Yes.
So now,
yes.
Okay, so now if I want to go back and I want to reference those, okay, so let's say I have another string. And I want to assign that to, I want to give it the value of, let's say, Sadiq. What value, what would I put here? If I want to, I've created a variable, string single name, and I want to give it the value of Sadiq. What would I put here?
5.
6.
So I would put that, or what would I put? What would I put exactly? I would just put 5. That would give it the value of 5. What would I put here? If the array name is class names.
Oh,
So
okay.
your array name and then the parentheses and then 5 for the
Exactly. So I would put class names 5, right? So this is going to print out. If I would print out right here, it would be Sadiq, right? So that's that. The single quote is a comment. So this returns the value of Sadiq, right? So now if I wanted to return the value of Shamam, unmute your microphone. How would I return your name?
Hey, Greg.
Yeah. How would I return your name to the how would I assign your name to this value? If I were had a variable str single name and I wanted to return your name, what would I put in the array? What would I assign to this variable here?
Names, open bracket 6.
Class names, what?
Open bracket 6, yeah, and close bracket.
6?
Oh, sorry. I'm at under 2, so it would be 2.
2. Very good. All right, very good. All right, does everyone comprehend that? Or does anyone not comprehend, I should say? Please speak up. Arrays can be can be a little difficult sometimes.
I'm good.
Okay, you're good. Now everyone, this is called a single, this is a single dimension array, right? So you can also have multi-dimensional arrays, okay? So let's go down. Yeah, it's actually a little bit easier to explain in Word, I'm seeing. Yeah. Shrink this. Hold on 1 second, got a comment. Okay. All right, let's go back and we'll go over multi-dimensional arrays now. Okay, so we'll insert a table. We'll do 5 by 5. Okay. So we'll call this, we'll dim this and we'll call this one str multi array. And here we have a 5 by 5, 5 comma 5, right? So this is a 5-dimensional array. I'm sorry, this is a multi-dimensional array. So think of it as an X and a Y, or when we start looping through these tables, this will be important. We typically assign I to the rows. So we might say dim, actually I'll put it up here. I'll put dim I and J. Word's actually doing a little bit of autocorrect here, but don't. This is called pseudocode, so it doesn't have to be exact. You guys are just viewing on the screen. So we have a multi-dimensional array now, right? So say,
Question.
Yeah.
So when you do 5, comma 5, does that mean there should be 6 spaces because it starts from 0?
Yeah, there are actually 6. Yeah, exactly. So it does start with 0. So I can do 4, comma 4.
Okay.
That's exactly right. That's a good question because remember everything starts with a 0, right? So this is the same also. So if we're here, and again we can do the same class names. I'll just copy the values here. All right, just an example. I'll just do 3 by 5, whatever. Just assume there's values and oops.
And also, Greg, for the parentheses, is it row first or column?
It's however you assign it really. But typically we do row first, row, and then column.
Okay.
Yeah. So always, yeah. So when you see references, like even to data tables, to the web table object, everything typically starts with column and then row. The one thing confusing about is you guys do want to use help, use the built-in UFT help, is that some functions take the first space as 1, 1, instead of 0, 0. So you have to read the help. So like when you're using web tables, it actually it starts with the index 1, whereas other functions start with index 0. So it depends. Like also, like say like the web list, like when we're using the drop down list, you're using a select, it uses #0 as the first element, and the drop down list would be #0. So a lot of things use #0. Some use use index 0, and some use 1. So sometimes you have to use help, or if you're not getting the correct value, that's something you have to work around, or look into help to make sure you're trying to grab the correct value. All right, so
for example, like if we're doing the 5 by 3, would it be like str multi-array 5, 3 or
yep.
2? I mean,
yeah,
4,
exactly.
3, 2. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, arrays are always 0 based. So let's go string single name. We already declared this equals. All right, let's see. Is Gauhar here?
Yes, correct.
All right, you're there. All right. I want to grab your name. What would I assign this value? How would I get? What would be your? How would I grab your name here? So let's count over. We're starting on row I, so this would be 0. So going across row. Okay, so if we want Amit would be 0, 0. Okay, that's his index. So I'll put a comment here. This refers to it. All right. So now if I want to refer to, okay, so now we're on, so the first index refers to the first row. Okay, 0. So this 0 refers to this entire row here. Okay. So if I highlight this row, okay, everyone in this row is on row 0. Okay. So then we go by the second index, we'll give you the column. Okay. So let me add a little comment here. The first index, I will put a quote around because it did I will refer to the row, and the second index, J, will refer to the column. Okay, so if we have string multi-array, we have I, comma, I, comma, J, all right? Which is the same thing as str multi-array, row, and column, okay? So this is an important concept when we're moving forward, when we start going through and creating our framework, again, like iterating through tables and looking through values. This is the same thing when we're iterating through our data sheets, right? Think of it as the same way. We're iterating through the data tables are actually indexed with 1, right? Instead of zeros. So it depends. It's very dependent. Like if you were to reference a set row 0, that would probably throw an error. Okay. So now Gauhar, we have this function. So this 0, 0 refers to Amit. So if we go down to row 2, right? I'm going to put and I want to assign my name, str single name, and I want to get Greg. I'm going to do string multi array 0, comma, and anyone. What is my? How would I grab my name here?
1.
Okay. All right. Exactly. All right, Galhar, how would I get your name?
Yes, correct.
How would I reference your name? What row are you on? What row are you on first?
3.
3. Okay.
No, 4. No,
4.
4.
What row are you on? You're on row 4.
I'm in row 4. Yes.
Okay. So in the array here, I would put what number would I put here if if you're on row 4. You're on this row here. So my first number in my array, what am I putting? 4.
Yes, 4.
Okay, 4. All right. And then what column are you in?
I'm on column number 1, 2, 3, 4. 3.
Okay, so right here I would put what
3.
would 3? Okay.
Yes.
All right, everyone, does this refer to Gauhar? What value would be printed here if we were going to print out string single name?
It'll print
Gonna
T.
be print T. It should be 3.
3. You fixed yourself. I was gonna 1, 2, 3, 3. Perfect.
Oh,
All right.
yeah. 3, 3, 1, 2. 0, 1, 2, 3.
Okay, is that correct, everyone? All right, let's see. Tasneem, you understand? How about we grab your name?
Yes, I do. It'd be
Okay.
yeah.
What would it be?
1, 0.
1, 0?
1,
Is that correct, everyone?
0, 1. It
What's
should
that?
be 0, 1. 0, 1.
0. That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
Actually, I did.
You're in 1, should be. Oh, yeah. Now
Yeah, you got me 0, 1. Yeah, you caught me. Okay, you guys are paying attention. Awesome. Does everyone understand this concept?
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone not understand? I mean, please feel free to speak up. All right, we have about half an hour left. Let's go back to the descriptive programming now. I'll save this as an array. I'll save this and I'll put it out there on the drive. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and close the practice functions from yesterday. I'm gonna save it first. All right, we're back on the descriptive programming tab that Shamsu started earlier. Okay, so I hope everyone's caught up with that. If anyone needs me to cut and paste into the drive, let me know. I mean, onto the chat session, let me know, chat window. So essentially, I'll just do it anyway, make sure everyone has it. All right, so that's what Shamsu worked on. It's in the chat window if anyone does not have it. All right, going back to his script, we'll go ahead and put a breakpoint here. I'm just going to go ahead and run it so I can get the page open. Oops, let me stop that one. All right, so we're back where Shamsu left off. We have our mortgage calculator open, and we have created descriptions for the home value field and the start month, okay? So does everyone understand what the purpose of descriptive programming? Anyone speak up? What is the purpose of descriptive programming? What does it do? What does it allow us to do? Let's see. Sadiq, what's the purpose of the of descriptive programming?
It's just that we can use it over and over again.
There's a lot of feedback on the mic. What was it? What's the purpose of descriptive programming?
So we can just use it over and over again.
What was that?
So we can use it repeatedly.
Right. So no, we want to. Descriptive programming is bypassing the object repository. Correct? Does everyone understand that? Okay. Good. All right. So the purpose of descriptive programming, as Shamsu was showing you earlier, is we're not using the object repository anymore, but we are using those same unique properties described within this application, these individual objects. We're actually going and getting all of the unique properties. I mean, we're assigning those properties to the web objects that we know. So we know that the web number field has these properties, and we're assigning it to this value, this unique value. So param, the name param home value actually assigns this to that web number object, and that's how UFT will actually find this field here, the home value. Okay. Now, there's actually two ways to use descriptive programming in your test. Okay. So let me, I'm just going to delete everything beneath here just so I can have some empty space. All right. Now, typically when I'm doing my descriptive programming, I'll have a notepad open, you know, with just like you can use like Microsoft, just like Notepad, or you can use Notepad++. Like if you've want to copy and paste there, this will keep the errors and things. You know, if you want to copy and paste from the SPI, I paste it into the code. Yes.
A quick question. So when you put stuff in Node++, like when you try to save as, it saves as like a notepad, right? So
Yeah,
what would be the extension for if you wanted to save it as just a notepad++?
Oh, Notepad++, the default is just a text file, so it saves it as the same as Notepad. But the good thing about Notepad++ is, if I were to look at, you can save as many different programming languages. So here, like, I can save it as Java, or I could save it as. Let me scroll this over. I could save it as many different. Oops, I didn't mean to save it. I can save it as many different types of files. So I can actually save this as, say, like VB script. So if I were to save it as like VB script, Visual Basic, wait, VB Visual. Anyone see VB script? I know it's on.
Yeah, like few more ups. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, one more. There you go.
There. Okay, so if I were to save this as test thing, and click save, this will actually format the same. So it'll and then when I'm typing it, it'll actually save as we have before, as UFT does. it'll format your code basically. So you can use it as a code, you know, to create code. It'll delineate, it'll get, you know, highlight your keywords and so forth. You know, dim is blue here and so forth. Okay, that's the purpose of Notepad. Let me close this. All right, so we have Notepad++ open. Okay, so like I mentioned before, there's two different ways to use descriptive programming. Let's say we want to grab all of these edit boxes on the screen and get a count of them, right? So this is what we'll do is we'll kind of use our array and for loops to grab all the information on the page for, let's say, all of these web number objects, right? So on your screen, what we're going to do is we're going to do a dim O-D-E-S-C and dim O web number. Okay, and we should have that on the screen. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create the ODESC. This is just, we're going to assign, this is a description object. Okay, and this will be our web number objects. Oops. Add an S to the web numbers, like that. O web numbers. Okay. Now, the same way in that you guys use the object spy to spy on these objects here. Okay. If we spy and we see the various properties, we can copy from this web number. We'll copy this and paste it into Notepad++. Right, we see all the various properties for this web number object. Okay, so HTML ID and so forth. Okay, the name of it. Okay, we can go all down. These are the individual properties. All right, let's go back to our script now. All right. So here, what we want to do is we needed to set the object type. So here you're just going to type set ODESC equals description dot create. Oh, okay, it automatically should type it in for you. Description dot create. Okay. Beneath that, we're going to type ODESC equals. Oh, I'm sorry. Now, what's different about this is, okay, we've created our description object, right? So now we want to grab what the properties we're assigning here. So we're going to try to grab every single web number field that's on this screen back on our web page, right? So we have home value, down payment, loan payment, interest rate, loan term, property tax, PMI. All of those are web number fields, as you guys have seen through previous recordings, right? So all of them have the same property of, oops, right here. They all have the same HTML tag, right? So we can take HTML tag and we're going to put that here. Single quote or double quote, and then you're going to type dot value equals, and then we're going to type input. Okay. Let's see. And we can also grab the MIC class if it's here. MIC class would be web number. Okay. So this is not displayed, but we're going to put ODESC, same thing, ODESC I'm going to put MIC-CLASS. This is the Mercury Interactive class. This is Mercury used to be before HP bought the tool. These are the default classes for the objects. So this is going to be web number. Okay. Now we want to grab the number, all of these values from. So this is going to grab all the web number objects from this web page here, right? So here, what we're going to do is we have our browser. Here's, let's go down to line 34, add some space, and we're going to do set, and we're going to do O web numbers equal to dot child objects, and then we're going to put our description object in there, ODESC. Okay. Let's go ahead and save this. Make sure no comments. Okay. All right, everyone should be here. Okay, what this is doing is from our browser page right here. So we're on our mortgage calculator page. It's going to grab all of the objects that match this description of input and web number from the page. So it's going to grab essentially every object that is an input, that has a HTML tag of input and a MIC class of web number, right? So it's going to grab all of our web number fields from this page. Okay, so let's, if we count them down, we have home value, down payment, loan value, interest rate, loan term, the start date year, property tax, PMI, home insurance, and monthly HOA. So we have 10, looks like 10 web number fields on the page, okay? So we're grabbing everything. It's going to grab this function here, get child objects. If we have, okay, so let's go back to our what we did yesterday. This dot child objects here. We're grabbing all of the web number objects on the screen. So what do you think the return value of this is? We're grabbing everything that's similar, everything that matches that description, we're grabbing and putting it into an object. We just went over this 15 minutes ago, 10, 15 minutes ago. What type of object do you think it's returning? We'll move on when you guys guess. Speak up, anybody.
Web number?
No, we're grabbing all the web number objects on the screen, but all the web, there's different ones, right? We have 10 web number objects on the screen. So this function here, dot child objects, what do you think it returns as the value? What do you think it sets this to?
Names, I guess it's gonna say home value, home insurance, PMI.
No, we're not getting the name, but what do you think all those objects, what do you think they're stored in? What type of programming construct do you think they're stored in? What do you think?
Index.
Close. What do we use indexes on?
Arrays.
Array.
Arrays, right. Right. So when we capture all of these, it's actually stored in an array. It creates an array of all these child objects that meet this description, that are input boxes and web numbers, right? So we're getting this function, child objects, will return an array of all of those, all of the web numbers on the page. Okay. So now let's go ahead and let's dim I. So add a dim I because we're going to create an iterator. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to iterate through and see what web number objects we have. So we're going to say for I equals, and we're going to, again, what do arrays start with? 0 or 1, everyone?
0.
0. Okay. Now there's built in this object, this O web numbers object that we've assigned all of these web number objects to. It has a count. So we're gonna, it's gonna give us a count. So we're gonna go to O web numbers dot count. Okay. And now we're inside of our loop. So what this is going to do, we're going to go and we're going to print O web numbers dot get. Now we need to give it the index, right, of I, right, dot get RO property. And let's go ahead and grab the name. We'll grab the name property and print that out. Okay. So what this is going to do is it's going to go from 0. It's going to get the number, this count here. This will get, this returns, let's say count returns the number of web number. Okay. Okay, so this will return the number. So let's, oops. Can you guys still see my screen? Hello, okay.
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right. So now we're going to loop through and we're going to grab the name property of each of these and print it out. Okay. The count property of this O web numbers will actually get the number that were found that match this criteria that we gave it, right? So we have mid class and we have input. Okay, let's go ahead and click save on our script. And we'll go ahead and put a breakpoint here. And let me close this browser. Can minimize this. And we're gonna run it from, I'm gonna debug from the top. Okay, we have signed that. Okay, so we have one sub item, O description. We've assigned that. All right, so now we're into our web page. We're going to set the value to $1 or $10 million, it looks like, right here. That's what you guys did earlier. We set those two values to June and 10 million, it looks like 10 million or 100 million. Yeah, 100 million. And then now we're here, we're setting this value here. And then we're gonna click play. What did it print? The first one, index 0, it found what? The name, what name did it print? For the first home value, right? So this is the first object that it found that matched our description of being a web number, and it's actually printing that value there, right? So let's go to the next one. What's the next one that it found that matched the object? Down payment, okay? Now we continue with our loop. Principal, interest rate, pay, param term, param start year, PMI, homeowners insurance, homeowners, okay? So now look, we got an error right here. General run error, okay? Let's go ahead and click debug. If we look at our local variables, right? I is 10, right? So right here where we have O web numbers dot count. Remember we counted that there were 10. We counted manually that there would be 10 web number fields on this page, right? 1, 2, 3. So if we go back to our output and we go ahead and count, we have home value 1, down payment 2, principal 3, interest rate 4, term 5, start year 6, property tax 7, PMI 8, HOI 9, and HOA 10, right? So why do you guys think this threw an error right here on this count function? We click stop. I'm going to click stop. Why do you guys think that this threw an error on this line? There's 10 objects.
Is it going out of bounds on the loop?
Exactly, perfect. So it's going out of bounds on the loop. When we assign this right here, right, when we do O web numbers dot count, this is gonna return 10, right? 10 objects on the, this is gonna return 10 objects, right? So when we get here on this line, this is gonna go, this is essentially doing from, this is counting from 1 to 10, right? Or from 0 to 10, right? So if I have an array that has an index of 10, so say if I have an array, I'm just gonna put my array 10. How many places is that actually in my array?
11.
11. So right here, we got, because we started at 0, we're not starting at 1. So even though there's 10 web edit fields on this screen, we're going from 0 to 11 because we're not starting at 1. Again, index 0 refers to the first object on this page, which was home value, right? So if we look back at our print, at our output, home value references 0, right? Down payment references 1, principal references 2, all the way down. So we get down to the last one, HOA would reference 9. So when we go back to our for loop here, back here at our for loop, I'll comment this out. When we're back at our for loop, when we get to O web numbers dot 10, right? This assigns I equal to 10. And then when we're printing out O web numbers object 10 dot get RO property, does this object exist? The O web numbers if I is 10, does that exist in our table, in our array?
No.
It does not. Correct. Right. So that's what's going to throw an error. Okay. So when you're using this type and you want to grab this, we need to actually subtract 1 from this count. So we're doing O web numbers count to -1. Okay.
Can we also do saying for I equal to 1 to web numbers count dot count. Would it solve the problem?
Do it to what?
From instead of saying 0 to web numbers dot count, we say 1 to web numbers dot count.
Okay, so if we did 1 here, right? Okay, so we'll put a 1 there. Okay, so when we're going back through our array, remember this O web numbers returns an array, correct? So web numbers I. And back to our web page here. Let's go back to our web page. Oops. I mean our Word document, I'm sorry.
Well, since it's an array, it's gonna start from 0 regardless, even if you put like 1 in there.
You could put a 1 there, right? But say if this is our home, this is home value, right? This is our home value.
So it's not gonna count the home value if I put a 1 in there.
Exactly. Right. Okay. So let's go unclose this. Right. So if I were to put a 1 there, it's going to start, and the first field that is going to be printed is going to say what? Down payment. Down payment refers to 1, index 1, not the home value. So we want to start at 0. Again, start at 0, and we're going to count. We're just going to subtract 1 from that count. Okay. An easy way, a better programming way to do this is that you could dim this and say I count, and then say I count equals web numbers, and then subtract the 1 here, and then just set the for loop to I count 1, 2. Okay. That way is a little bit cleaner because we're going to return to 10, and then we can say subtract 1, 2, 4. Okay. So now we're counting from 0 to the number of elements that were found on the page. Go ahead and close the browser, and let's clear out our print log here, and let's start from the top, and I'm just going to run it for sake of time. It's at 2:29 here now, so I'm just going to go ahead and run this. All right, so this time we received no error based on our script index being out of range. Okay, so let's go ahead and close this now. Okay.
Greg?
Yes.
Would you mind quickly going back to the test that you did yesterday? All this LKs, uppercase, and all that array and stuff like that, because I was gonna refer to something, because if
all right, did everyone understand that? We see that there was no error this time. So there's 2 different ways to descriptive program. Now we can actually act on some of these objects later, like yeah. I mean, can I come back to it real quick?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's I just want to add something to this test real quick. Okay, so let's say if let's put this in quotes. I'm just going to copy this. Okay. All right, what we're going to do now right? And then we're gonna all right. Let's close this. What we're gonna do is we're gonna test, right? This is another way it's gonna reference this object, right? So and we can set the same values based on, you know, the indexes, right? So we're gonna loop through and we're gonna check that property name, right? If that property name equals equals home value, they're gonna set the value of 500,000 or 5 million. I'm sorry, we're gonna set the value of 5 million, right? So let's loop through our test. Let's close our test. I'll put a breakpoint here at the for loop. And we're going to run from step. Go ahead and run this. All right, our output is here. We've gone through and we've typed in our 100 million in our home value field, okay, as we see here. So now we're gonna step into our loop. We're gonna print the name, property name. The property name is home value here. Now we're gonna test our if statement, right? So we're gonna say if it equals home value, then what are we gonna do? We're gonna set 500,000 instead, right? So we're doing a test. Okay, we now see that that value has changed to 500,000. So you guys see the descriptive program, you can use this descriptive programming object as well to set values or, you know, to interact with the web page as well. All right, now we're gonna do what? We're gonna exit the for loop, right? So if we step into that, the test ends. The for loop is over and our test is over. So I just added some quick logic. So these are things we can do. A lot of times we'll use this descriptive programming. There's web pages, right, that will say you're creating a new record. And a lot of times, I'm sure you guys have seen this when you're like entering things sometimes, just like on normal websites you use, it'll create like a checkbox next to like a name or an entry that you've created. And say if you want to delete something, you need to check that box. Well, these web pages are created dynamically, and we're not going to have a description. Can you guys mute your phones, please? So someone's coming through. Thank you. So sometimes you'll have a checkbox come up, but it won't be displayed on the screen ahead of time. So we need to use descriptive programming to grab that object, right? Because so say we want to delete a record, and we'll actually be doing this in the future in this class. Say we've created a list of class people, everyone in the class, and say my name has been added to the list, and my name is on row 5, right? It has my last name in one column, my first name in another column. It's in a web table. We can iterate, right? Again, using our for loops, we'll iterate through, and I'll search for my last name. I'll find the column that has my last name that matches in column where the last name is. I'll search the first name column to see where my first name is, right? So I'll do a comparison there. I'll say, does my first name and last name match with what is in my data table? If that's true, then I want to go and dynamically grab, say there's a checkbox in the first column. So typically there's like a checkbox field might be displayed in the first column, and I want to delete my name, right? So I'll go and dynamically search, and then I will find that checkbox and have it set that checkbox to on, which means it's checking it, and then I'll go ahead and delete that record, right? So back to our automated testing, we want our tests to be repeatable. So if I'm creating a new record in a table and I have the ability to delete that record, that becomes repeatable. Some applications don't let you have multiple records with the same name. So say if I wanted to, back to our HR application, if I wanted to create employee Greg Mia, and I've already been added there before, it might throw an error, right? So if I want that test to be repeatable, I want to go and delete that same record. We want to start the application at the same place where it started, okay? So to make the test repeatable, I will go and again, find my name, put a checkbox there using descriptive programming, because the rows could change, right? So if I had it hard coded that my name was on row 16 and it matched just on row 16, and then say a new employee was added, and now my test moves down to row 17. Now my name moves down to row 17, and I go delete row 16. It's hard coded in. I'm going to delete the wrong employee, right? My test's not repeatable, right? So we want to make sure that they're repeatable. All right. So that covers that. We'll go and we'll actually be going a lot more in depth about this over the next. I think we have what, 3 weeks left. I'll be out next week, so Shamsu will cover some things, and then I will start with the HR application. We'll get more into depth, and we'll kind of use that as a real world type of application that we will automate and like create a framework for that. Amit, let's go back to yesterday's session. I'm going to go ahead and close this browser now. Again, there's the class sessions. The group sessions are open during the weekdays. If you guys need any help or have any questions with any of these things, I'm going to go ahead and add the test yesterday.
That's fine. You can keep the same test. If you go to line 42 and 43.
Okay, 42 and 43. Got it.
If you just could maximize it. So you read through this line, and for example, 42 and 43. It's like, okay, take this web numbers and you say something like print the home value, and after you print the home value, set the home value for 500,000 or 5 million or whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you basically reading in plain English by looking at a particular line or a set of code you wrote or scripts you did, right? So
right.
my thing was, right, when you do that, like, I think it makes so much more sense, and it gets easier. I mean, it gets easier for me. If you could, if you could do that, like, like when you start writing dim and then you declare a variable and initialize the variable and all that, I think that would, like, make your life so much easier when you do that.
Okay, so you want me to dim the, okay, so actually I was going to do that for coding practice. It is easier to, like, I could do this dim, and I could do str name, okay? And a better way to do this would be for X, I could say str name. I create a variable here equals string name, and then I can do print str name, because we've already, this function right here has already gotten the property, the name value, which was home value here.
Yeah.
And I already printed that out, right? So when I do this line here again, that's actually kind of like, that's actually inefficient, right? Because we have to call another function, this get RO property function has to be called again. So it has to go back and look at the application again and grab this property all over again, right? So we're actually doing this twice. See that? We're doing that twice right here.
Yes.
Line 41 and 44, the first, those are actually doing the same thing, right? So we don't want, for efficiency purposes, memory purposes, whenever you code, if you're grabbing a value, grab it one time. Like, don't keep doing the same thing over and over, right? So you're right. So here we want to do string name, right? So we've captured, we've gotten our string name parameter, or variable, and we're assigning it to the name property in the for loop. We're grabbing the name property and printing that name property. So we'll say object name. Okay, so we're printing the name, and then we're going to test if it's the home value, then set 500,000 or 5 million, and then we're going to exit the for loop.
Yes.
Okay, so I can delete that. I'll save this. I'll go ahead and run it.
Yeah, I mean, whatever you did, that's also like when you read, so in plain English, by looking at the code, that actually, it gives us a better understanding, like what's going on actually.
Okay, yeah, definitely. That's why I tried to add the comments and everything so you guys could follow along. Okay, so here we look at the results here. This actually accomplished the same thing here. Okay, so we're object names. And then we go back down to our script. Initially on line 31, we set a value of 100 million. Then we're testing, we're going back to our for loop. I took out the exit, the for loop, but we're getting down to our for loop, and we are assigning it a value of $5 million if the string name equals home value. Right? So this is just an example of ways we can use this. We can also, like, if I wanted to grab back up here, I can change our description here to I can change it to the web list, right? So we can grab all the web list objects on the page. I'm not going to change this variable here. Web numbers. Web numbers will now print the number of web lists on there. And then I'm going to click save, clear this out, and click paste or run. Oops, cancel. I'll run this. I just want to run this particular. Close the browser. Oh, okay. Let's go back and look. Our descriptive programming, were any web lists found? It didn't print any, right? The reason being, when we look at our web list, right? Let's spy on our web list real quick. Let's copy this and put it into Notepad. Let's see. So the HTML tag, I mean the class that we're using is web list, and the HTML tag is actually input. But when we look at the HTML tag, right, we actually have the input tag is select. That's why I didn't find anything that matched, right? So nothing worked here. So we would need to change this here to select. Go ahead and save that. We can go ahead and run it again. Now we have that the only web select object on the page is the param start month, right? So it's how you can use it to find the various objects on the page. Okay. So I'll change this back to the web number, and I'll go ahead and save this script. This will be out there on our scripts directory, and we'll go ahead and end this session for today. If you guys, I think Shamsu is going to be online, and if you guys have any more questions, you can go ahead and go ahead, go through him and ask him anything. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and end the session. Anyone have any questions before I go?
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Shamsu, are you online?